I was lucky that day. I got a second chance, but I knew then I had a problem to solve.
Hello and welcome to episode 61 of the Smart Agents Podcast. My name is Michael Walter and I'll be your host. In today's episode, we're joined by Helen Hudson, founder and CEO of SafeShowings. As a realtor, how many times have you been showing a home on a listing appointment or holding an open house and gotten an uneasy feeling about the situation, or worse, actually have something happen to you? Well, after a scare of her own, Helen decided to do something about it and got to work on our app, SafeShowings. Now, before we get on to the day's featured interview, make sure to subscribe to the Smart Agents Podcast. You can find the show on all major podcasting platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and now Amazon Music. Also, as you can see if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to the Smart Agents YouTube channel. Click the bell to get notifications when each new episode is uploaded. And lastly, if you or somebody else on your team has an awesome story or tip to share with our community, send us a message at feedback@smartagents.com. We're always on the lookout for new stories to share. All right, let's get on to the day's featured interview with Helen Hudson, where she shares all about her safety app designed specifically for realtors, SafeShowings. If you could, just tell me a little bit about yourself, how you got into real estate and where you're at.
Absolutely. I'm honored to share my story with you. I'm passionate about safety, and that happened 3 years ago. I'd just been a realtor in Charleston, South Carolina for 6 months. I was showing property. I had an appointment to meet the buyer at the property at 2:00 on a Saturday. And as you know, most realtors are working with people they don't know. But I arrived to the property early, as we're taught to do. But as I drove up to the neighborhood, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. It just didn't feel like a safe area. But it's middle of the day, 2:00 on a Saturday. I wait for the buyer to arrive. He arrives, greet the buyer. We go in the house, and I'm taught to leave the door open, give yourself an out. When we go in the house, I left the door open. He went to the back of the home and he got on his cell phone. And a minute later, a truck drove up and 2 men jumped on the porch. That's when my heart stopped. I thought, oh my gosh, nobody knows where I am or who I'm with. And that feeling of fear, I'll never forget. Thankfully, though, I'm here to tell the rest of the story. The rest of the story is what happened that day it was a combination of things. They saw the for sale sign in the yard. They saw the realtor magnet on my car. They saw that the door was open. They thought it was an open house. So they were there just stopping in to see if they could see the home. I regained my composure, gave them my card, told them I was working with a buyer and they could call for an appointment. But I knew I had to think about my personal safety different. It could have ended a lot differently for me. So I let that situation change, knowing that Helen needs to be more concerned about safety than the sale. So that's how it started.
Right. And, I think that's a story that I think a lot of people, have had on their own. I think that's something that a lot of agents can relate to. Is you're going into an unknown situation, regardless of the neighborhood that you're in. It could be a nice gated community. You don't even, you never know who the neighbor is even. So having that, thinking about your safety, I think is definitely paramount.
It is. We're so vulnerable in our industry. And I shared the story. Right out of college, I managed apartments in DC. I was 24 years old, living in Sterling, Virginia, by myself, managing people a lot older than me. But even in the 80s, we would make you surrender a driver's license to see an empty apartment. Yet our industry is the largest commodity that someone will purchase in a lifetime. And there's no law, policy, or mandate that holds us accountable for who we unlock a door for. I think it's backwards. I would like to see that change. And I'm passionate about all three parties' safety. My safety as a realtor, safety of the buyer, and the safety of the homeowner. I think we really need to take a strong look at how we become more accountable when we go into a property for security reasons for all three sides.
Right. So what did this experience lead you to do?
Oh, great question. Well, I left that situation knowing I had to change things for myself. First, I wanted to find out, is this a valid problem? Am I the only one that feels this way, the way I felt that day? And NAR, the National Association of Realtors, website tells us that 38% of realtors, and there's almost 2 million if you count real estate agents, 38% of us have had situations like I have. That's a big number. That's a valid problem. I also had to see, I did simple Google research to see, what else is happening with realtors in terms of safety. And I found that over 200 realtors have been murdered in the last decade. I think one life lost is too many. And I read their stories. I printed out probably 15 of those articles, and I read the details on how they lost their life. And I would be willing to guarantee you that if they could speak to us today, they would tell you they didn't know they were working with a criminal. We go out, we help people, we help them find and purchase the largest commodity they'll buy, but you can't look at someone and know if they're a criminal. I was lucky that day. I got a second chance, but I knew then I had a problem to solve. The next phase of my deciding if I would create a company and develop an app, I had to look at the competitive landscape. I did my research. I went to the NAR website under safety resources, looked at the competitors. We've also been there for 3 years. And what I was looking for specifically is I wanted to find out, is there something that helps me deter crime? I want to be ahead of the game. I want to tell every single buyer that I work with in a professional way, don't mess with me. I'm in control of my safety. So that was most important to me. I also wanted to conquer that problem of fear that I felt of nobody knowing where I am or who I'm with. Most of my competitors have the ability to notify your emergency contacts where you are. In that situation, though, 3 years ago, standing on the porch with 3 men, if I relied on that sort of solution where it just tells your emergency contacts where you are, if they had intentions to harm me, all that does is say where my body is, because I'm dead, and I knew that was another problem that had to be solved for our industry. We needed to have a proactive approach to safety.
Yeah. So you kind of did your research and you found that there was a need for this. So then what were your next steps to creating your app?
I've worked with 3 different developers. I'll write a book about it one day. But I started out working with a local developer here in Charleston. We had to come up with a name. It takes a lot of investment in terms of, financial backing to create a safety app. But basically, step by step, every part of the process of how our app works is my idea. But I'm 50, almost 57 this weekend. I'm a blonde and I'm not that smart with technology. I just have the idea. So I gave the idea to those that are the experts that can write code. We launched our first app 3 years ago. It looks similar to what it looks today, but I was passionate then about getting an image of a driver's license. And that story's pretty interesting. 3 years ago, before I started to travel, I went to DC to kind of learn the trade show world again, walk the floor, see what the competitors do. It was right before I traveled and went to about 45 trade shows. So I went to DC to the NAR conference and legislative meetings. And the next day I'm there early to observe. And I'm hungry. I want some coffee. And I go to the convention center. I see this guy standing at the top of the stairs. He's holding 2 cups of coffee. He looks like Duck Dynasty. And he said, "Who are you?" And I about jumped out of my skin, startled me. And he said, "I've seen you 3 times. I saw you on the airplane coming from Charleston. And several other times I told myself I'm going to have to ask who you are if I see you again." So it's no coincidence. I'm a believer. I believe that I'm doing my purpose, and I know God puts me in front of the right people at the right time. So he ends up being my business partner. I go back to Charleston. He says, he told me he wanted to spend some time with me. He owns many companies here. I sat down with him in his office and he said, "Helen, why are you getting the image of a driver's license?" And I told him the reason. And he said, "F that. I'll just let you think of what the word is." He said, "You need to get an image of a face." And I said, "I didn't even think of that. That's brilliant." He said, "Well, people can't fake a face, right? And you can't say you forgot your face. Most of the time when you ask for a driver's license, people will have to either go back to the car, and they could go back and get a weapon, or it's an awkward moment." So we've made our app very easy for people to use and to be in control of safety.
Right. So tell me, what does your app do? What is, where is it at now?
Perfect. It's so easy to use. As I mentioned, I know we juggle a lot of different tools as realtors, and I wanted to create something that you basically, if you can push buttons, you can be in control of your safety. What it does, it operates so easily. Once you register and you put in your 3 emergency contacts, the first thing I teach realtors to do is to set the appointment. We're always going to set the appointment for a showing. You have a conversation early. You say, hey, I look forward to meeting you Saturday at 2. I want you to know that our association cares about safety. Therefore, we use a product called SafeShowings. It's just the world we live in. We're required to get an image of a face of every buyer before we unlock a door. We would do that same accountability if it were your house on the market. So you get comfortable with the verbiage. You tell people before you meet them that, hey, I'm in control of my safety. Then when I drive up to the property, I arrive early. I'm in the safety of my car. We always do that. We arrive before the buyer. Before the buyer arrives, I press a button that says create showing. The timer starts. It goes to 45 minutes because you can get in and out of your first showing usually in 20. We don't want to call for help unnecessarily. The next thing the app will ask you is, who are you meeting? Remember, I want my emergency contacts to know if I'm harmed, who harmed me. So you auto-populate that as you start to type the person's name. It auto-populates into our app. Then when the buyer arrives, you get out of the safety of your car, you greet them in the front yard because 99% of the murders happen inside the home. So I greet you and I remind you, hey, as I mentioned, our association cares about safety. We use SafeShowings, a realtor safety app. I need to get an image before we go in the home. And we can do a selfie if you'd like. If you want to make it lighthearted, you can do that. So you take the image, you unlock the door, you've done everything to deter crime at this point. You're showing the property. Number one, if they're a criminal, they're not going to show up. They don't want to get caught. That's the number one fear a criminal has, is getting caught, not the punishment for their crime. So if you follow our processes, you're deterring crime, but you're showing the property. As they're looking around, the app is running and it's counting down the time. The main screen might be at 19 minutes. You just go ahead and reset the timer. It goes back to 45. If you forget, when it gets to 5 minutes, it says, are you safe? If you are, reset your timer. The timer goes back to 45 minutes. So if I have 5 houses to show, I just keep resetting the timer. And then when I get in the car to drive to the next location, our app knows exactly where you are. It knows street by street, road by road. The top part of the app shows street as you're driving by those addresses. It's updating. When you put it in park, it locks in your second address. It keeps a history of all your showings. Same thing with the open house. There's an open house feature. You can put how many hours, how many minutes you're going to be at the open house. I greet people at the door. I say, hey, y'all are welcome to come inside. The homeowner has required I be accountable for who I allow in their home. I'm sure you like the same accountability for your home. I just need an image of your face, and it's click, 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 click. They're standing outside. You allow them in the house, and that tells every buyer you're in control of your safety. Then when you finish a showing, you press a button. Remember, all you got to do is press buttons. It says end showing. You end the showing. The last step in the privacy of your car is a 5-star rating. This system enables us, similar to Uber and Lyft, to tell each other from our industry how we felt from a safety standpoint. So it's 5 stars that are gray, and you have to push 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 before you can finish the app steps. And next month, that buyer might be going to another association working with a different realtor. And I teach realtors in our database, when you have that conversation with buyers, hey, before I meet with you Saturday, I have to get an image of your face. We use SafeShowings. We're growing so fast, eventually people are going to say, I know about that product. I work with Helen, a realtor in Charleston. And for every buyer in the privacy of your office, you can create the showing, press the button, and then put the person's phone number you're meeting with. And if they're in our database, you'll see the 5-star rating. So it can help protect you from a safety level. And you'll see the image of the person's face that you're getting ready to meet.
Right. So from the buyer aspect, what's been the reaction, when you do ask, can I get your picture? Because I think that definitely can be it can put people at ease knowing like everything is being taken care of, like the safety from even just I think that safety thing can be sometimes a two-way street because a person coming in might not know the situation either.
Right. Great question. And that does come up. We get people want to know, what do the buyers say when you tell them you're going to get an image of a face? As I mentioned, since the 80s, apartment communities make us surrender a driver's license to see an empty apartment. As long as you're framing it in a professional way, most buyers that are sincere about buying property, they care about safety. They would like that same accountability if their house were on the market. I don't get pushback. I get more fear from realtors thinking they'll lose or offend someone than I do from actual buyers. I care now more about the safety than my sale. And I'm trying to change that mindset. But think about it this way. If a buyer did push back in a nice way, you can say, are you on social media? Do you use LinkedIn or any of the social media channels? If you go to the doctor's office or you go to airports or through security of any building, your face is on the cloud. The image that we take is going to a cyber secure cloud. It's not going to go to my camera, my pictures on my phone. And the reason for that is if I am working with a buyer and I'm following the process and we're in the front yard and I say, hey, as I mentioned, I need to get an image of your face, and they attack and destroy my phone, the images that are stored, if I was able to get that picture, it goes to the cyber secure cloud. Your 3 emergency contacts are notified immediately of your last location of the phone, who you're with, because you did that before you got out of the car. And if you took a picture, that would be sent to the authorities as well. So we hardly get pushback from actual buyers because they understand safety is important now more than ever.
Right. Well, and if you do get some pushback, it's probably somebody you didn't want to work with anyway.
Amen. That's what I say. I said that could be your blessing. In most markets today, there's not enough inventory. There's a ton of buyers to work with, and it might help save your life and weed out something that's suspicious.
Right. And I like what you said earlier about, it's a deterrent, and you've already taken care of all, if somebody knows that there's a security camera that I have to walk past every time, that place is a lot less likely to have an issue. So by doing what you're doing, you definitely are, deterring the crime. Is that something that when you were doing your research, did you reach out to law enforcement or self-defense people? How did you kind of come up with your plan?
My business partner's background is in artificial intelligence. I may have mentioned that, but he's also wrote code that launches missiles. And we gave my presentation to the chief of police here in Charleston. We had a room full of officers as well. And they said, you don't realize how much easier you're making our job by giving us a recent picture of someone. Think about it from a criminal standpoint. If you watch Criminal Minds or any of those shows, you mugshots, if a criminal if they've committed a crime, that they've got their information on the cyber secure cloud. It just helps authorities find them much quicker. I talk a lot about proactive and reactive. Proactive and reactive is like night and day. If I had a gun that day 3 years ago, standing on the porch with 3 men and they intended to harm me, it's useless. Unless the person sees the gun on my body or I told them I have it before I meet with them, such as I'll meet you Saturday at 2. I just want you to know I carry a concealed permit and a weapon, and I hope I never have to use it. By telling someone before you meet them, you're being proactive. But if you hide a gun in your purse, it's reactive. It's too late. If you use pepper spray, mace, or you press a button that calls 911, that would not have saved my life that day. The proactive approach is a doorbell camera, as an example. Criminals know they're being videoed, as you mentioned. We give our partners access to rider signs that say SafeShowings monitored that go on the top of a for sale sign, and it has cameras. That tells every buyer that, hey, that listing agent cares about safety. And when I list my house, I'm going to call them. It tells every criminal, you're going to get caught. You're being watched. Same thing inside the home for open houses. We provide our partners an 8.5 by 11 flyer that says the same thing. SafeShowings monitored, has the cameras. Those are things that deter crime. They're proactive. That stops it before it happens. Even a sticker in a window that says you have a security system, statistics show that that does deter crime.
Right.
That's what we do.
And, you talked about earlier, having the magnets on your car and the signs outside. What are some of the things that you also, with your app that you're kind of doing in conjunction and teaching people in conjunction, to keep themselves safe?
We are learning and adding products every day in terms of support, best practices to give our partners. I've done about 150 of these demos just since in the last 2 months, because we're running a promotion right now. And I'll learn from my associations. They'll tell me things and like, we love what you're doing, but we would like for you to, our concern is code of ethics, for example. We abide by a code of ethics as realtors. And I had a conversation with someone that said, I want you to teach realtors they have to do this with every buyer. I said, I agree 100%, because there is a product out there. It's a competitor product that runs a background check. And in my conversations with realtors, they don't tell the buyer they're running the background check. And I have a deep concern for that for several reasons. There could be a violation of code of ethics if you're not doing it with every buyer. And on a safety standpoint, you're not being proactive. You're not telling the criminal you're running a background check, so you're going to show up with a false sense of safety. Or a criminal might give you, it could be that their record's clean. They've never committed a crime. They're having a bad day, and you become their first victim. So in order to be proactive, you have to have the conversation early. So the collateral that we created on Code of Ethics, basically, it reminds realtors to use it with every single buyer. Remember those that have died, 200 realtors that have died, they didn't know they were working with a criminal. So you have to be consistent and in control. And the Code of Ethics quote we added at the bottom of the flyer says, criminals don't discriminate, neither do realtors, according to our Code of Ethics.
Right. How, so obviously, with it being an app, the App Store, where can people find your app?
Oh, absolutely. It is in both stores. If you have an Apple phone, the app stores, and Google Play for Android. And I wanted to make it affordable. And I wanted it to be a no-brainer for an individual to be able to download. So if you go to the app stores, it's $4.99 a month, less than a cup of coffee, or $49.99 per year if you'd like to do the annual subscription.
Right. And hey, a cup of coffee for my safety. I think I'll trade that in any day.
Exactly. We want to make it so affordable.
Well, great. Well, before wrapping up, just what has been some of the reaction from the agents that have gotten your app and that have used it? What's their, how have they felt after they started using this?
That's really what motivates me is the positive response I get. When I do my presentations, I get a lot of different reactions, but they're mostly people will tell me their stories. How I had one lady say that she had been raped, and it was pretty emotional hearing her story. Same thing when I go to trade shows. I love what you're doing. I love that you care, but I'm here doing this because I know it's my purpose. I didn't know that this would be what I do for a living, but all my life I've looked for something that makes a difference, that I can, make a difference in the dash. And I thought it would be tall clothing because I'm tall or something else, but God put it in my life for a reason, and I'm here to help protect others. And I know that just by the feedback we're getting and the traction we have with realtors, we have over 500,000 that have access to our app right now. And our world's not getting any safer. So we're seeing using it more and more often.
Right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. And, I think that this is such a great tool, and it is something that is so easy to use.
Definitely.
And the other, I really like this idea of the database that it's creating, because somebody can go in and as it grows, if I can go in there and search, okay, this person has been with, 4 or 5 showings in the area, seems like a great person. Okay.
Exactly. You can read the reviews. Basically, it tells you from a safety standpoint what other realtors rated their experience from working with that buyer.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much.
I want to thank Helen for joining us today. And if you're interested in checking out the Safe Showings app, I've included a link in the episode description. So once again, if you think you or someone else on your team has an awesome story or a tip to share with our community, send us a message at feedback@smartagents.com. Well, that wraps things up for this episode, but remember, follow the show wherever you listen to podcasts and make sure to subscribe to the Smart Agents YouTube channel. Again, I'm Michael Walter, and we'll see you on the next episode.